Hi, I'm Paul. I'm a former head teacher. So I worked for 12 years in early years and infant school settings, and I'm here to talk a bit about my experiences of inclusion. So the first question, is the UK education system for inclusion? The simple answer is no. Why would it be? Education was created as an idea 150 odd years ago, and it was designed entirely to provide literate, numerate workers for the factory system. And so inevitably, those learners on the outlying edges of education, those with inclusion needs and learning disabilities, inevitably, they never learned the way that their peers did, and therefore they never became literate and numerate. And education hasn't really changed much since then. There's still this focus on academic achievement, and if you fit the mold, great. If you don't fit the mold, that's unfortunate, because the system doesn't care. Now, I'm not saying for 1 minute that the professionals who work in schools don't care, because they do. The professionals that I know who work in schools are passionate about inclusion, but the system itself isn't set up to promote inclusion. So as a head teacher, what were the barriers that I faced in building an inclusive school? Barriers were human, always a barrier, financial, and probably training and professional development as well. I would say those three are the biggest. So the human barrier is, how do you get staff to see the value of including children who can be more challenging, who might need more support, might need different ways of working? How do you influence those members of staff, the people who are actually going to go out and do the work with young people? The second being financial. I know of a school, and this is a genuine story, I know of a school who had a buoyant budget at the end of last academic year, July 2021, when the new cohort of children arrived in their school. Because they are an infant school, they had 11 children with very significant special educational needs or disabilities, all of whom had to have funding provided to the tune of the first £10,000 of staff support. And these 11 young people each needed a full-time member of staff to support them whilst they were in school. And so the school had to go out and recruit 11 new members of staff with no additional funding. So the school went from a buoyant budget with a bit of a carry forward to a massive deficit instantaneously like that. So the financial challenges, the financial pressures that are on schools is a significant barrier. And the final thing is training and professional development. The inclusion of children with very diverse needs, be those physical, be those emotional, be those cognitive. How do you train the staff? You know, in my old school, we had 70 odd members of staff. How do you train all of those members of staff to meet the needs of all of these children when the needs are so different? The needs can change over time, and you never really know from 1 week to the next which children you're going to be working with and so on. So very significant barriers. In terms of how do you build a culture, I was very proud of the inclusivity of the school that I left. And that came about because of the messaging that everything that we did in the school put children's needs first. And that's why we existed. That's why we went to school. And therefore we would put the children's needs ahead of our own. And if we didn't like it, we could leave. And my mantra as a head teacher was, the children are the only people associated with the school who can't leave. They have to come here. And therefore we will put their needs first. And if we don't like it, we can go somewhere else. And it wasn't a positive message for the staff to hear in the first instance, but they saw how we became an inclusive school, and it was worth it in the long run.